And welcome back to the Flickering Torch podcast. We'd like to welcome you all back after a very long time because life clearly hates us. And every time we've scheduled something, either one of us is dying or work.
I still partially have the plague.
Yes, I'm. You can't tell, but we're actually behind plexiglass. Smite this is in a jar, if you will, or a box. I can't remember. But Mr. Dead Scott here.
And Smite this.
And we want to thank our one loyal listener for listening, whoever you are. We're surprised you're still hanging around, but in a good way.
Yeah.
Yay! Because of life and all the other garbage that slows us down, here we are. So today we are going to be talking about loot. And I know we talked about quests last time, so it kind of seemed like a natural little buy-in to this. So when we say loot, I want to cue heavenly music. So, which probably won't, chime in as in me putting in actual music, because I'm lazy. But hey, here we go. So, what is loot?
Loot is rewards and goods and anything people want to throw at you. I wouldn't necessarily call rewards because some of it's not rewarding.
Oh, God, no.
It's like pocket lint and, tweezers and, bobby pins and things people find in their pocket after
ear hair.
Defeat bosses and stuff and come back and they're like, here's my earwax. I found it here yesterday. It's my favorite collection. So, it's rewards for doing tasks and quests and things like that.
And sadly, loot is one of those afflictions that we all absolutely have to have. Because, you play any game that's based on a loot system, such as, I'm going to use popular examples of, Diablo. It's all about that loot, son. MMOs the same way. Your gear level determines everything. Your item level determines everything.
Every point counts.
Because all of that digitalness, definitely increases your peanut size. Penis size. There we go.
Hey, we should
tongue-tied already. But
maybe it's a circus MMO. Peanuts.
Oh my god. Jar. The jar.
That wasn't even a pun.
Where's the jar? Okay, so let's talk about examples of loot. And so, obviously, loot is, again, stuff. Most common types of loot you would see would be items. Either quest-related or usable or non-usable. For example, oh, you killed the 10 wolves that have been plaguing our city. Here's a potion.
Yeah.
I died 3 times, man.
Or here's my used loincloth.
Yeah. Oh, great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It's wonderful.
What else? Gear?
So I guess that would fall into gears. You have armor pieces, you have weapons, you have trinkets.
Sharp things, hard things.
Feet pins. And you have the amulets, rings, all that. So, gear, sometimes I'd say mounts are gears, or gear, not gears. But anything you can actually use as a utility or protection. Information, sometimes completing quests you get info towards other quests or world events or where you can find the gear. So it's basically saying you have to do one more job to go get your actual loot.
Oh yes, which we talked in great length on the quest concept of that, of here's a story of Philip the Doomslayer and but my memory's a little jargy. Can you go kill something and I'll probably remember by the time you get back.
I totally will.
Yeah. Okay. How about we just wait and see if it comes back? No. You have to kill it.
He's giving me Alzheimer's. It's an Alzheimer's monster. I'll remember when you get back. Probably, maybe.
Yeah. More than likely. Let's see. So services typically would be something that could be seen as loot. I walked into this town and there were a bunch of goblins running around. I killed them, and guess what? The townspeople are like, "Hey, great, we can reforge your shit for you." Or hey, how about massive discount on any? We got a 25% off sale on holy water.
Yeah. See, I don't see that, and I really like the idea because in MMOs specifically, or even RPGs, I mean they're near the same thing. In loot sense, is you save a bloody town. And the town suddenly becomes back to normal after you save it, and the instance changes, and they just treat you like, oh, thank you. It's you're still a baker, no discount. I mean, the military discount for these crappy militiamen. They get like 5% off. Where's mine? It's like it would be nice as an incentive to actually be able, like I will fast travel here just to get my discount to like bulk item.
Oh yeah, I do that
grab,
too.
Things like that, and it's like it would be a good thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, in like some games talk about that a little bit. Like let's harken back to Darkest Dungeon.
Yeah.
Like when you get into town, it is just absolute shit. There's nothing available aside from like the stagecoach and like the mission board, if you will.
Yeah.
There's probably something else. The graveyard, sorry. Because of course. And then like as you progress, you can upgrade the town. And as you upgrade the town, things do become a little bit more affordable. Things do become more open and available to you. That was a good system of a loot reward, if you will.
Yeah. So that one's more you don't directly get loot, like discounted stuff as loot. So you get, which is my next one, is you get tokens or certificates.
Oh, okay.
Which you then trade in to upgrade or to craft. Well, Darkest Dungeon you trade in to upgrade.
Right.
You get discounts and help you along. Then there's also like other types of tokens, certificates where you trade it in for like gear, like they let you select your own type of sword, or if you like stabs or things like that, so they don't have to say here's a randomly generated piece and you're like, oh crap, now I have to run through this dungeon again. Here's a token, you gotta go cash it in yourself.
Yeah.
Why give you this nice item to go kill the monster in the first place? I don't know, we're gonna give it to you after.
Yeah. You're a warrior, you use swords. I got a wand.
Yeah, here you
know what to do this, right?
Oh, pick
wand in the eye, out.
Another one would be trade items. That would be like almost like crafting, or
a good example would be like in the Legend of Zelda games, there's always the tradable item you get. And so yes, it is a reward you get, and you keep trading it for a different reward, and eventually it usually gets you something to like. Most of the time, it's a good sword. Yeah, like a really good sword in Zelda. But because I remember, like I think Link's Awakening was the first one to do it, or was it Link to the Past?
I think Link to the Past.
I can't remember which.
Yeah, I can't.
One of those two was like I think the first one I remember as a kid. You guys can correct us in the comments, or the one of you can correct us in the comments. I remember as a kid, like that trade system was really cool because like I never knew how far it would go.
Yeah.
Of course, because back then we didn't have the interwebs. But I remember it was like worth it to kind of venture down that path and see what would happen.
Yeah.
And
that was a good sense of exploring before wikis popped up.
Oh, gosh,
just Google 10 seconds and you got the answer.
Yeah, it's like, oh, okay, so I need the broken toenail to get to the dilapidated finger, to get to the eyeball, to get to the...
Ferrari!
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, no, so that's one sense, is like there's different types of trade items, and it's kind of like a vague. It's basically, though, just items you don't necessarily keep. You trade in for different types of rewards, whether that be, like, you get gold. I'd say gold is almost like a trade item, because you don't really do anything with gold. It's almost like...
There are some games that allow you to, like most Final Fantasies have an option called throw money, where you throw money to do damage, so... But I see where you're going with this, because currency is more or less a trade system.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's kind of like you just take one thing and you trade it for something you want or necessary. Or there's this sense of trade items, like you craft items, or you get craftable items and you
sell them?
You sell them and trade them for different types of loot or more gold, things like that. So, I mean, there's different, that's why it's kind of vague. There's different definitions of it.
Dude, what about raffle tickets?
Yeah.
I kick ass at skee-ball. Yeah. I don't, by the way.
You just walk up to the thing and just drop it in. At least if you're gonna cheat effectively. God,
sorry.
I have alarms.
I send the kid up there though.
Yeah, that's true. No one will yell at the kid.
Yeah. Well, a little bit, but
last one is collectibles. It's all you.
Collectibles. Oh no. Collectibles. Collectibles aren't bad. They're not bad at all. But it goes into that whole joke of like I slayed a demigod and killed it. And this dude, you nailed it with the joke earlier. You go and get these like collectible pieces that can either be made into something wonderful, or just like collectible pieces that over time form a powerful ability or skill,
or just freaking like here's a cosmetic item that's
Yeah.
like collectible. It's like, oh, here's this old fisherman's hat I found. It was my father's. I don't want it. So you can have it.
I didn't like him. You can have it.
Yeah. Or back to the dirty old loincloth. Oh, you can equip this at any time. So there's like collectibles or like different pets, miniatures, things like that. Completely useless items, typically, either for cosmetics or for display or to show your.
But they make you look badass.
Online cojones, basically.
Again, digital penis size.
It's important.
It's so important. Or digital boob size. Sorry, ladies, we don't mean to discriminate.
Yeah, no, there's pixels for everyone.
It's beautiful.
So let's jump into why it's important.
Okay, so why is loot important? Obviously loot's important for many different reasons, because what's the point in doing something without loot? Okay, so we're going to give a reward or reason for actually finishing a quest, so a motivation, if you will. So hey, that's a good reason to have loot, and why else would we do something for loot? Because it wouldn't have the same meaning if I didn't put in somewhat of an effort to acquire it.
Yeah, hands down though. That's kind of like it's like a double meaning, because you do quests to get loot. You get loot to do quests. It's kind of like
no, it's a kind of a balance system, if you will, like a chain reaction as you go along. Obviously, loot's important too because it gives a player a chance to tackle increasingly difficult content. Not everybody may be, a grinder, if you will, just sit there and I'm gonna kill this enchanted rabbit 1,000,000 times so I get enough XP where I'm ungodly level, but I'm still using wooden sword.
Yeah.
So the player who wants to get through the story, the casual player, the person who just wants to experience something may have the opportunity, depending on how balanced the loot is, we'll get into that later, to actually get a weapon that's actually useful, or to get a piece of armor that's not going to get them killed in one hit.
Yeah.
It's
like some of those, let me grind for purples at level 20, and it's like, well, you just level up once, and it's already better than most purples. Or you spend the 2 hours leveling up.
2?
Well, I'm just saying, getting a few levels, and then it's already better than the purple at level 20. So let's see. Provide the player the next step in the quest line.
That's one of those annoying style quests, but it could be seen as a loot.
It ties into that information, or the information loot, basically the lore quest related. It's progression. It just kind of continues your motivation. Usually, the longer the quest, the better the reward.
Most of the time, not always.
Most of the time, yeah. So that kind of gets you on the mindset. It's like, oh, this is a multiple quest line. Either it's going to be good loot, or it's going to be a cool storyline at the end.
Mm-hmm. The next one would probably be like another reason why loot's important. It does allow the player to dive a little bit deeper into the lore or the item or the gear aspect of it.
Yeah, gear does explain quite a bit of story. Well, Dark Souls explains everything,
which I think is really cool, actually.
Yeah, I do too. Let's see, World of Warcraft. A lot of MMOs use small descriptions because there's so much content they just can't throw it at you in books and things. So you click loot from raid and stuff. Of course, basic loot doesn't have it, but purples, legendaries, things like that have descriptions and kind of explain to you how characters are, what happened in the world to get this item. So that's pretty cool.
No, and that Dark Souls is probably the best example of it, because you're given this ungodly weapon of doom-bringing, and it's why does this thing exist? How does it exist in a very world that doesn't explain shit to me?
Yeah.
And so, a little bit of history on it, that kind of oh, cool, now I know why, this Warhammer of smashiness is here.
Yeah. You get Pate's armor, and explains who the character Pate is, and, because you don't get any background. You meet random strangers. And then you do something, and it turns out he's this trickster. And it's oh, the armor explains it. That's cool.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you wouldn't have figured it out. Although that method is a lot harder. It's usually more vague, so it's a lot harder to gain any info out of it.
Right.
So the next one would be currency. To allow for further questing too. I mean, that's kind of
money is seen as loot in one aspect or another, and so gaining currency or gaining items you can sell for currency obviously has some use or another in it, because it's like maybe you'll get something that has the ability to teach you something new, like a spell. I'm trademarking that skill.
A skill spell.
You'll get a skill.
Yeah.
Just like a super move. Smooth, buddy.
Smooth, that's good.
I got that from one of my friends, but yeah, like you'll get a spell or a skill, or maybe like a different item, or maybe add like a socket to some of your gear. Like Diablo's really good at that. Torchlight's good at that.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Sockets are like ungodly powerful at times.
What's funny is you don't see sockets outside of
dungeon crawlers.
Yeah, out of like those top-down style dungeon crawlers. I mean, because if you think about MMO, there's not really sockets. You kind of like get enchantments. Some of them use gems and stuff, but they're not the same typically.
Usually they're in like a ring or something.
Yeah, they don't you don't show the socket holes, and you don't add gems to them. They're more like, oh, here's a little scroll you apply.
Yeah,
that's interesting. I just thought of that.
No, I didn't think about that either, actually, because like the only thing I can remember sockets being in is like dungeon crawlers for the most part.
Yeah,
which again, love dungeon crawlers.
Diablo's the main, and
Torchlight.
Yeah,
and I'm sure there are others that do that as well. But I think it would be, it would be interesting to think about, and I have another thought on this as well. But like let's use Legend of Zelda for example, like. Legend of Zelda with sockets, like let's go simple here. So you have sword, shield, hat, body, and boots. So 5 different things you can put sockets in. So you can tailor Link to a certain playstyle.
I mean, you have like the fire resistance armor, then you have like the green, your standard.
Yeah, your standard chainmail.
Green mail, yeah. I think the red is the fire resistance, right?
Yeah.
And blue is like the magic resistance.
Or blue lets you breathe underwater, depending on the Zelda.
Yeah. Well, that would be like a hat, helmet piece. But either way, like you attach sockets to further guard against different types of damage, speed increases, roll.
Yeah, like
bomb carries.
Yeah, like in your body piece, you could put like damage resistance, or you could put like in your sword, you could put like undead plus. So like if you go against a skeleton, your first swing is just gonna cut that thing in half.
See, Zelda's not a lot about the armor, as neat as would be. I would like actually just armor choices, like buying different types of armor or colors.
I think Breath of the Wild, the new one that's coming out, does give some more options on
about
that.
Time, because it only took like 20 generations to do so. But
I'm only 60.
Yeah, so it's kind of sad to see it so late, but at the same time, it would be nice if they implemented. But I'd like to see like different types of armor. But the one thing I would like to see is their weapons having different types of enchantments or sockets you can put into it. Like if you just like faster attack speed, or because you're not really good and you just want to smash the button, or like flame damage, things like that would be cool.
One thing too I realized too, like another form of sockets, which it doesn't really count, but in Final Fantasy VII you had materia slots. But materia was the item that allowed you to cast spells, learn magic, learn different abilities, but you did put that into your gear. Because everybody had a weapon, everybody had a piece of armor, which is usually like a bracelet of some sort, or a hat, and then everybody had an accessory.
Yeah.
And so the accessory didn't give you slots, but the weapon and armor did. And so if you found like your ultimate weapon, like it had 8 slots in it that were linked it to it a piece, which was great. It worked out really good, but it had like no growth for your materia, so you couldn't learn new stuff.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, does that really count as like a reward system, like a loot system that does sockets in the way we're thinking of? And probably not, but
no, I don't. Yeah,
we're tangenting a little bit here.
Yeah, just a tad. We should actually go back a little bit to how currency is important. Just you're right. It allows the dynamic gameplay. People don't realize how important potions, buffs, and unique items are. Due to the fact that it allows people to be different. In a game that only has a set amount of items and stuff, it allows them to play differently.
That's true.
Because you have like the holy hand grenade, and some other people might not use it, but in situations you might use it when you run out of
options,
rage or mana or whatever you're using. So it allows people to use their skills how they want to, but in time of need they have this dynamic usable items. I'm the person that never uses potions. Ever. Like, I'm not a potion. I mean, only in oh shit moments, which I'm using raid bosses and stuff like that. I still rarely, because I'm the healer typically, so I stand in the back. But even then, I don't use magicka because I'm a very efficient manager. And if you're to the point where you're doing stupid stuff,
you're gonna let him die, huh?
Well, no, I'm not gonna let him die. It's just like I can't keep up, and I'm gonna focus on the people who are managing correctly, because you're going to end up dying no matter if I just wasted mana on you. But I don't tend to, because I don't find it necessary. I like to hone my characters around it and not use the dynamic items. But sometimes like buffs and stuff are important. Mm-hmm. You just need that. You don't have the items to necessarily get you through the dungeon to get the better items. So you might have to use like food or water or drinks, I think what they use for those temporary buffs and stuff like that. So those are very important.
It's interesting you mentioned like how you don't use potions, because like thinking back on it, like playing all the Final Fantasies I have over the years, there's this, everybody's familiar with the elixir. The elixir is this badass potion that recovers all health, all mana, removes all status elements, and it's great. I fucking hoard those things for some reason. No clue why. I hoard them.
Yeah.
Like, there's no, like...
Well, if they're hard to get, I mean, you don't want to use them.
But it's like the end of the game, I know it's the final boss, I'm getting my ass handed to me, and I refuse to use an elixir. Yeah. Like, there must be something wrong with me at that point.
No, because it makes you a stronger player. Or dumb, either one.
Let's go with option 2.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's hard, because like Dark Souls, you have like divine blessings, right? And you only get a certain number of them through playthrough, because they don't just drop. You found bodies throughout, and New Game Plus you can get more, but you're still limited to like maybe 3 or 5 or so throughout a playthrough. And so you save them most shit situations, or PvP if you like to grind things out. And so I never use them. I don't ever use them, because they're like that holy grail kind of, like, these are going to be important someday for something, and I'm not going to save
this thing's
them.
Great. It's wonderful. It's going to sit on my shelf.
Hey, like 40-year-old brandy or something.
Yeah, pretty much.
Eventually I'll crack it open when I'm old and need this healing.
I'm just waiting for the right day.
Yeah.
You just died. I'm waiting for the right day.
That's why I don't like having super rare like consumables like that, because then you'll never use them, or some people never do. Or I don't want to grind them out. That's why I like standard potions, where it takes like a few crafting items maybe to make a health potion, or like not a hefty price, but I like them to be not dirt cheap, because the game forces you to use them usually.
There was a good game that just popped in my head. Most people probably won't know. It's called The Legend of Dragoon. And like when I saw their consumable section, I thought it was absolutely stupid and brilliant at the same time, because as a kid I thought it was dumb, but as an adult it's brilliant, because they just gave you limited items. There was like a potion that recovered 1/4 of your total HP. There was a potion that recovered half. There was a potion that recovered most. Yeah. And then there was a revive, and then there was a revive at half. And they never changed past that. They were always, or I don't even know if there were that many. Maybe it was just like one potion and one revive. But it made you use them because they grew exponentially as you did, which would make sense. Like, why would you make a potion that can only heal 50 when it's going to be useless in 10 levels?
Yeah.
Like, and the shopkeeper, like, in the final town's like, hey, I got this potion, if you want to buy it, it's on sale.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that pulled the splinter out of my thumb. Like, thanks. Now, what are we going to do about this open wound in my chest?
Yeah. That's a good point. Thinking back, Zelda's another example. Is
the healing potions?
Yeah. Healing, magicka, and then both, or energy. What is this? Magic?
Well, there was the red one for healing. There was the green one for magic. There was the blue that did both.
Is it just magic though?
Yeah, it's just magic.
Is it okay?
Yeah, which is helpful in like Turtle Rock, for example, in Link to the Past, where you need to have a magic potion with you, because casting those different types of ice rods and fire rods back and forth drains your MP.
I really like that puzzle. I'm just saying, like, you use your items. Unlike the other Zelda, it's like, just leave this in the background. All right, so we can go on for that for hours. But the next part is, how do we feel about loot in games? There's always the good, bad, ugly, balanced. So the good?
The good, like, loot can be good. It has the potential to be good. Sometimes it really is. Some games nail it really good. You know, like where it is good loot, it's useful loot, it's balanced loot, if you will.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it's unbalanced, but in a good way.
Yeah.
Like, oh cool, like that quest wasn't really that hard, but you just gave me the life ender.
Yes.
The rolling pin of doom, the life ender.
Yeah. Damn it, Granny. You're always stealing my XP.
I gotta be honest with you, we stole that from the Drawfee channel.
Oh,
you
yeah.
really should watch that video. It is absolutely hilarious.
great.
Those guys are great. We subscribe to them. Yeah, we're gonna stop plugging them at this point, but
Yeah.
because none of you listen to us. I apologize to our one fan.
Yeah.
We love you.
You're not no one. You're someone.
You're someone. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so
So loot could be good. Like I said, for examples, that end game item that just makes you feel so good inside. Occasionally, unique items, rare items can make you feel good. Like I like mounts specifically. Getting your first mount in like an MMO or something is awesome. It's like, oh, I can finally move without wasting stamina or getting tired every few steps.
or hitting auto run on the keyboard.
It's like my guy lives at Krispy Kreme or something, you know. It's like, you know, it's like great to finally get that mount, but getting past like, oh, now there's like I have 12 mounts. It's like you can't, you know, you're just you're questing just to feed your pets, basically.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I don't like having a crap ton. I like it to be important. So I like important loot. Which kind of gets into, you know, we'll talk about later, but non-spammable loot, which is like junk items, things like that.
Yeah.
You know, so I like items of worth that aren't just spammed at you. I like rare items.
And that kind of falls into the bad loot territory. You know, like loot can be very bad. Loot can suck. I hear people bitch about bad loot all the time.
So how loot's bad? You can take the crack at it.
Yeah.
Because I have a few examples, but I'll hold off.
God, I mean, like bad loot, like obviously something unbalanced. Like, you know, like again, like my example, like I slayed a demigod. You know, I killed Ifrit. You know, and like, oh, we thank you. You know, we can finally rebuild the town without it catching on fire. You know, like here's a broken wooden sword as your reward for, you know, taking down the demon. Broken wood. It catches fire. Like,
yeah.
Oh,
demon from hell, fire. Yeah.
Brain hurt. Why? Why? You know, so loot can be absolutely god awful horrible, and usually junk items, like, you know, like you already have 99 potions in your sack. It's like, hey, I got like 10 more for you. Thanks. Here, just drink those. Yeah.
It's like white items. Like you're just taking up loot space.
Oh, dude, I don't even pick them up.
Yeah.
I hit a certain level and they decorate the ground.
So that yeah, that's true. We should make a video of that. It's raining white loot.
That's on you.
Yeah. But that comes back to like even enchanted green and blue and stuff are garbage too, because they spam so many enchanted items.
Time,
yeah, it's like that's why I like the rare loot. Because the bad is like, yeah, they spam enchanted. It's like if it falls from like tripping a troll or something and they drop green loot out of all their pockets, you know, why don't the citizens fight back?
Which, speaking of, how did that troll have that 10-foot bow staff in his back pocket? I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's like, he's only wearing a loincloth. Where are you hiding the loot? Yeah.
Oh. Hey, do I have to draw you a picture again?
No, I'm not wearing that ring. Nope.
It's a genital ring.
Yeah. So it's just, it annoys me that like MMOs, like especially, have bad loot because they spam just such crap, you know, items that aren't necessary at you.
Right.
I mean, they could, but they have to give you content to keep going because most MMOs are grindy.
And sadly, RNG comes into a factor on that. That cursed, unruly bitch of RNG.
So that's another example is randomized loot. It's like, oh, I finally got a sword from this dungeon, but it has magic stats, and I'm a goddamn warrior. You know, it's like, why? You know, I don't use magic at all.
Fire! I casted ice. Shit.
Yeah. So, I mean, that RNG kind of comes bad, too.
Yeah.
You've been wanting you've done the dungeon 5 times, and you get a staff every bloody time.
Now, mind you, too, like sometimes again, RNG does decide to bless you at one point in time.
It's true.
And I mean, like Torchlight's a good example because like the gambler, because at the end, like I can grind for loot or I can just pay for something possibly at badass.
Yeah.
And it literally is rolling dice at that point. And I've gotten some pretty ungodly gear.
See, but you knew what you were in for. You didn't have to like really work for it. You were given currency and it gave you a choice. Whereas like you grind through a dungeon and you have, say like I see the guy using a sword. Yeah, it drops the staff. It's like he was using a sword. I want the sword he was using now.
Yeah, like what happened? Did I cut it in half somehow?
Yeah,
yeah. Okay, so how do we feel about loot being? Is it useful? Is it a waste of time? Like, is it the drive that a lot of gamers really should have? Because I mean, let's face it. I've seen people just go ape shit and lose their crap over loot.
It depends on the game.
Yeah.
Like a lot of games are different. I find a lot of loot it's kind of like it's just filler. It's kind of like those fetch quests and things like that. It's filler. It's to slowly get you to a certain point. I find that a lot of games make it unrealistic, which I mean, it's a game. A lot of this fantasy, magical, or even sci-fi things. Of course, it's not real, but there's a point where it's like you spam so many items at you. And all these are like decent items or
can be used in one form or another.
Yeah.
Like, this would have been great like a level ago.
Yeah, it's a lot of it's like waste of time and not useful. It's good to have like potions and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. What do you think?
I think it depends on how the developers incorporate their loot. It really and it just goes back to a balancing issue.
Yeah.
I'm not saying we have an answer for that because if you put me in there trying to figure it out, I'd be just as screwed. I mean, some games nail it really well.
Yeah.
They do a really good job of balancing the loot system. Other times, and usually I think those are more of like kind of single player adventures.
Yeah, it'd go more RPG than MMO or like FPS. I mean, we haven't talked about FPS, but they have loot too.
Yeah, that's true. Battlefield's a great example of that.
Yeah, battle packs and things like that for leveling. Or skills. We didn't really talk about skills being loot.
Yeah, we haven't really.
Because some people reward you like skill points or like spells.
Abilities.
Yeah, abilities.
What did I say? Skills? Skills? Shit, I forgot already. I'll go back and listen to it.
Skills, I think. Okay, but so what's your... Let's start with like personal feelings. Like, if you could have a loot system, or what is your choice?
Oh wow!
What do you dislike the most? Or
so my personal feelings on loot is it's loot.
Yeah.
No, it's not that bad. Loot. I like the concept of loot. I really do, because it has a good drive and a purpose. Do I think it's done appropriately, proportionately, what have you? Fuck no, nothing ever really is.
Yeah.
But at that point, like, it should be something we always strive to do better on as an industry and as a community.
Yeah.
Like, loot should be something that's a constant working process because, when we hit the perfect game, what then?
Yeah.
I don't really have like a good system for loot, but I'd like to see, like, let's use for example like an RPG, a classic RPG kind of story. Like, obviously, balancing the loot to where they give me something that's useful that I may or may not use, that's not going to totally break the game but has the potential to really help.
Yeah.
Is great. It's wonderful. How do you balance that? Whew. There's so many variables that go with that.
Yeah. I would say it's easier. It would be easier to make a loot system for an RPG than an MMORPG.
Oh, totally.
Just because every character is totally different. You can't curve the world around a single player in an MMO where you can in an RPG.
Yeah, and it kind of gives you the option to really kind of like tailor your play style in one aspect. And like, I wish I played The Witcher 3 because something tells me a lot of what we're talking about can tie a little bit into that from what you've described to me.
I really like the loot in that. I never got so my personal feelings of loot is I love loot. Loot really can sway me, and I love getting new items, and although there's a lot of trash, but I usually just ignore that or sell that right away.
Mm-hmm.
And so I mean, there's a lot of bad, don't get me wrong, I love loot. Witcher 3 was great. I don't see the things playing it's been a while, but I don't remember anything bad actually looting. I mean, there's junk items, obviously, and potions, but, like, you get swords and stuff and different axes, like, people are actually using, which is nice. You know, you can take them or leave them, but I never really focused. That game was so heavy on story and so heavy on providing great quests. It's like you could take these like bandits items and stuff, but most likely it's not going to be good. You know, and a lot of the time it's recognizable in the game too. Is like when you get hit, it's like, oh shit, that has fire damage. You know, that guy probably has a decent loot I want to check on. You know, and you'd actually find that. So it's a good example, but I can't really remember anything bad about their loot system. I know there's junk items.
There's always junk items.
Yeah. But I mean, that game didn't really have like crafting or anything, so it didn't have to spam, you know, items you had to deconstruct or you know, craftable crap like that. But if I had my personal way, I kind of like the Elder Scrolls style, and I'm not talking about Skyrim. I'm talking more of like the Oblivion. It had like a kind of like a tier system. You start out in this world, and everyone had like these crappy ass unsharpened iron weapons. Everyone had them. You know, the guards would have great weapons, but you're not going to kill a freaking guard. Good luck. You know?
He'd kill you.
Yeah. You know, they had great like ebony armor or steel or something like that, depending on the guard. And as you progress and level up and start facing harder enemies or like completing quests for like the gods through their shrines or going into different portals, you get maybe steel armors, and then like elven, and then like ebony as you leveled up. And not everyone had that. You know, you'd still come across a bunch of enemies with a bunch of crappy iron stuff you could pack if you didn't want to. But the thing is it kind of seemed like realistic. Like, you know, these people are actually using iron swords to hit you, you know, and...
Well, yeah, because, like, they're not gonna, like, the lowly thief is not gonna go out and, you know, maybe find McStabby Stabberson Doombringer.
Yeah.
But the odds are no, they're gonna have just a simple, like, steel dagger.
Yeah, which at that point, it might be a waste of time, useless loot, but it doesn't matter, because I find that progression's there. It's like, you earned your stuff, so that rest of that loot's like, yeah, I earned this sword through fucking blood and tears, basically, and yeah, I can murder you easily, and you have crappy loot. You know, so that's my preference.
Yeah. So let's go into, I know we talked about this a little bit, like good examples of good loot, and the joke is that there probably isn't a lot of good examples of good loot. You know, aside from like the final weapon. Yeah. You know, like, or a really cool like skill you can teach a character. You know, because like I know for like a good example, like RPGs are really good about giving final weapons. Yeah. That are just literally Doombringers, Ragnarok, if you will, just like and things explode just by looking at them. Yeah. You know, and then skills, like I remember a couple games that like did like you put in the effort and you got the loot reward for this skill that was actually really damn good. Yeah.
I like skills as loot rewards because it's like you've actually used your experience and you finally learned. You know, instead of just fireball, you've learned like meteor storm. You know, and it's like now you can rain hell upon people.
Funny, we both went to meteor.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what's the next step? Besides one fireball, you have multiple fireballs. You know. So yeah, I mean, good loot, balanced gear for sure. It's appropriate to level.
Well, like you were talking about with Oblivion, like yeah. So like balanced gear for that, for example, like yeah, you level up, you put in the effort. Hey, you upgrade to steel. Sweet. Yeah. You know, that makes sense. Like, I don't need dragon scale armor because I'm... where would I encounter that? Yeah. You know? Maybe hours down the road.
Yeah. It just balance. I like final weapons. I like having final weapons that are still useful in the end. Right. So, it's like, oh, you got the sword, now everyone's like one-hit wonder. No, but you know you're still going to be facing the other demon gods and blah blah blah. So it's good to have a final weapon that packs an oomph to it, but it's not just overly powered. I mean, it's kind of like balanced as well, but it's nice to have those epic weapons.
Well, I mean, the difference is like going with the final weapon that does like substantial to decent damage versus going in with like a near in-game weapon that like just tickles them.
Yeah, exactly. It's grindy versus not grindy.
Right. It gives the casual player an opportunity to succeed.
And the color. Purple versus orange. You know, it's like, oh, totally going orange. So, yeah, spell skills, like we were saying, that's great. what do you think about collectibles for end game? Like unique items, things like that. I find like end game I kind of annoyed. Like, here's cosmetic. It's, I just defeated a freaking, a Demogorgon over here, and you give me a hat, or it's like I don't feel.
Oh yeah, that's always super frustrating on when like the. And that's kind of example of like bad loot.
Yeah.
Obviously, like we joked about before we were recording, like you defeated the demigod lich that was plaguing the town forever, and like, oh yeah, we appreciate you doing this and letting us like rebuild our society and our way of life. Here's a sticker for your name badge that says, God Ender.
Yeah.
And a thumbs up. Good job.
Yeah.
What? I almost died 3 times getting into this thing. Like, a sticker? Like a title? I mean, for some people, great, but for me, it's like, oh, thank you. I'm gonna give this to somebody else really quick.
Yeah. It's like no one ever thinks about it. You'd think the warrior would like to like settle down, maybe have his own house or farm or something. How about you guys pitch in to maybe give him a house of like Steve because he got totally killed? Give him Steve's house. No one likes Steve anyways.
Poor Steve.
Yeah, poor Steve. Yeah.
No, and that's the thing. Like that would be kind of cool. Like some games do that pretty well. Like and I think Bethesda does a good job of that because I know like in Fallout 3, for example, like you save Megaton. Like, hey, here's this abandoned shack we weren't using. Yeah. Like, you want to call it your own? That's awesome, great. Or you blow up Megaton, like, and Tennyway Towers, something like that. I can't remember the name.
Yeah.
Correct me in the comments. Like, hey, we got this like room for you that you can totally decorate and make your own.
Yeah.
We appreciate you doing that horrible thing we made you do.
So yeah, having ownership in the world is important. Getting like, if you do stuff for certain people, like say you a woodworker, hey, I have furniture.
Yeah.
Give you a discount on furniture, or here's a piece of furniture. I mean, some people would really like that.
Well, and Stardew Valley popped in my head temporarily when you said that, because it's like, you befriend the villagers, you do these things to help them, you gain your relationship trust increase with them, and they send you random crap.
Yeah. Recipes and
yeah, recipes and like the carpenter, she'll send me wood and rocks. Like, cool. Like, it wasn't dire, but it was helpful.
Yeah, it's always nice to collect more. That's about that game. I was actually thinking of furniture pieces. Like, I liked having all that because RPGs have really cool armor, but no one really gives you display cases.
There are some games that do like mannequins.
Like Oblivion does like little display cases and things like that as well. Or Skyrim probably does. I didn't play a ton of that. I mean, that's not bad. I like to see all the different types of armor.
Yeah,
and it's cool.
Well, that's one of the things I like about that type of loot is when it is like cosmetic and purposeful.
Yeah.
At the same time, because it's like, like if I acquire dragon scale armor, like, and it just looks like a normal plate armor piece, like, I kind of want to see the scales on that thing. Like, I kind of want to see like that different appearance and look to it. Sure, it's cosmetic, but it also has the increased stat boost.
Yeah.
Same with like weapons, like, like games that kind of cop out and it's like, oh, here's the coral sword. It's crafted from coral, in the ocean, not from Walking Dead. There's a joke there. And it's like, oh, cool. Like when I swing this thing, I want to see like bits of coral kind of like go into people and cut and tear and like rip and be jagged.
Yeah.
But instead, I'll get this animation for like a steel sword being swiped. It's like, no.
Yeah. I want the benefit of having this item, not just No, I've for sure. I would actually for like a loot just say, discounts in town, having your own house, things like that, display cases. I think it would be really cool if you're like, I'm going to go adventuring today in this dungeon. I have all like these nice sets of armor on display, right? Since it's going to be a fiery dungeon, you know what? I'm going to go to this display case. Yeah, I think the dragon scale would be great. I'm going to wear this one and equip it before you go out of it.
Yeah, so
interacting with your display case.
Kind of like your own little armory.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. I think.
And that'd be a fun way to kind of like improve like how loot is treated because, like I agree with that. Like, here's an example, like Paper Mario Sticker Star. There's a museum of all the stickers you get because you use the stickers as a tax.
Yeah.
And so like you can actually go and view them. It would be cool like if when you donated one to it, like once per day, it would give you a freebie of that. Or like you said with your armory, for example, like, hey, like, this is when I go to the mountain, this is when I go to the swamp, this is when I go to the fire dungeon, this is when I go to the pit of death. I love the pit of death. Really wonderful this time of year. I want to use this item, this armor.
It doesn't work for stat games though, like MMOs, because the armor is so easily traded out.
Yeah.
But I mean, like RPGs, like an Elder Scrolls, it doesn't really lose its value. It's strong, and most ebony's all the same unless you enchant it, but that's kind of cool. But like, oh yeah, well, I'm gonna have this type of armor. It doesn't change whether I level up or not. Maybe more powerful enchantments, but those are replaceable. You still keep the armor,
Right.
So that would be more beneficial in an RPG compared to a stat base, because stat base, it's like, oh well, yep, here goes that super godlike armor because of the new DLC. See ya.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's no longer important.
Yeah, the angelic armor that was blessed by multiple angels and then handcrafted and caressed by his personal lord.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that thing's garbage now.
Well, it's
What?
Guild Wars is guilty of this, but so is World of Warcraft. Is like, you can equip like the most powerful new item, but you can still use the cosmetic of the old one.
Right.
It's like, I feel it loses value that way. It's like, well, for one, the creator of this new armor doesn't get the glory of having their armor shown, because I mean the designs and creations are wonderful.
Yeah.
But and two, it's like it just doesn't feel the same. It's not the same armor,
Mm-hmm.
But
No, I was guilty of that in Final Fantasy XIV. Like when the ability to cosmetize your armor came out from other pieces, because some of the gear looks stupid.
yeah, that's true.
I totally swapped it out for something else. But
Good armor should not look stupid.
Yeah,
That's bad loot.
that is bad loot.
Yeah.
So we kind of talked a little bit about it on ways to improve. Like one thing I found, like when we get to like randomized loot, and obviously Diablo and Torchlight and a couple other dungeon crawlers are good examples of this. Like a shared stash is awesome. A shared stash is also dangerous.
Yeah.
Because it's great. Like, hey, I killed this boss and drop shit for a mage, and I'm clearly a thief. Like, I'll just hold on to this one piece of gear that'll be cool if I reroll a character. But at the same time, like you reroll a character, you tweak your stats purposely to equip that thing, and all of a sudden you have the lesser Doombringer of the world. I like that word for some reason.
Yeah. Doom, doom, doom.
Doom, doom, doom. But I liked your armory idea, like a place to have an armory. Some games do that really well. But how would we improve loot? Like, is there a way to improve it? I don't really know.
It would have to be moved across stat based, and it'd have to be more thoughtful in the sense of like what this item could do for situations. And you would have to, for my armory situation anyways, is like, yeah, you got a coral thing that moves more effectively in water. It would be better for water based.
Yeah.
And so you'd have to move away from stats and more of like, how would each type of material stuff be effective? Just like steel versus iron. Steel's going to be much sharper, much stronger. It's going to be a longer lasting blade, It's like, so versus the crude iron, it's like, the peasants might use this.
The sword's more of a mace the more I think about it.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's like, the dragon scale, it's very durable, good heat resistance, things like that. So you'd have to move away from stat-based system and move towards what makes sense for the actual item you're given.
Right.
And I think to make loot, stop spamming it. Like, spam, I'd say more consumables and gold. Because, like, people give you gold, but it's, like, never enough to buy anything at your level.
Yeah.
Have you ever noticed that, like, MMOs specifically? It's like, you can't afford shit at your level, ever. You have to keep questing.
Keep grinding.
And then by the time you're, like, the max level, it's like you still have to grind to get that because it's never enough. You can never keep up with it. So I'd say spam more consumables, maybe more gold to fit the economy, but make the items last, more unique, more rare.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
that's not a bad way to kind of look at it. Because I mean, like, if I want to afford the toothpick of destiny, like, it shouldn't be like 2 million.
Yeah,
it's a toothpick.
Yeah,
can at least be 1 million. Yeah. Let's be reasonable, people.
I don't know. To get that stuff out, it's a big fight.
Gingivitis.
Round 2, fight.
Different game style. Jar. Oh my gosh. Okay, so question of the podcast, because we've gone pretty good on this one, actually. Yeah. What is that piece of loot that you remember? What is the good, the bad, the memorable, the infuriating, the one that made you want to throw whatever your controller was through the screen?
Mm-hmm. What are your improvements?
Yeah,
we kind of rambled on different things.
A lot,
but it's just general loot, So
I blame not having beer.
Yeah, too. It's just, what do you think about loot? I mean, it's widely used in everything, but it's not really defined in like a good method.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts? How can it be improved? like Dead Scott was saying, what loot do you remember?
Yes.
So that wraps it up for the Flickering. Wow.
Yeah, your tongue tied now.
Yeah, Flickering Torch podcast. This is Smythus.
And Mr. Dead Scott.
And we'll see you on the next one. Hi, Mom.